So let me summarize what we are trying to do here. Right. So we use this flow chart diagram to understand how the macroeconomy works. Right. We start with just simplify everyone into two groups. You either households or a firm. And that firm and household, they're going to interact at two different markets. One is market for goods and service, the other is market for factor, like resources, right? And then so we say there are three ways to look at the size of the economy, right? So the first, we can just look at here directly, which is what do we compute? Sorry, what do we produce, right? So this is number one. Number two, we can look at goods market to see so how much people spend, right? So this is including consumer spending, including government spending, and then later we include investment spending, and finally we include import and export, right? Because whatever you produce, eventually you're going to consume. Okay, so this must equal to each other. Nothing is going to destroy. Does it make sense? Like say, example, at the end of the last class, I can show you it could be the case they produce more than they can sell immediately. Right? What they're going to do? So they're going to classify this as inventory, and the inventory is going to classify as investment, and then that's going to use for next period, right? Okay, nothing is going to left. Is that clear? So that's why product equal to expenditure, and then we can also look at factor market. You use all the resource, you must compensate for the resource, right? And then the compensation for the resource you use must exhaust the revenue you generate, which is the value of the goods and services produced. So hence, income must equal to what? Must equal to product, right? But in the middle, so your income will use to finance the spending. Yes, you may have saving, but then whatever you save is going to be, what? It's going to be borrowed by someone else. Someone else is going to use that money to spend, right? So that's how we get this triangle. Are you with me? Okay. So now, so we're going to see some definitions, but that's kind of, it's already built into the discussion, right? First, private saving. So essentially, that's disposable income minus your consumer spending, right? And the financial market, so that includes bank, stock, and the bond market. That means like banking, or includes the banks, stock market, and the bond market. Now, so essentially, that's just going to channel the money from those who have to those who need or who those don't have. Okay, so this is financial market. Now we go to the government. So you have government borrowing, and you have government purchase of goods and services. So government purchase of goods and service is different from government transfer. Okay, government transfer, there's no good or service is required to return. But the government purchase of goods is government pay, and then government, as a return, government will acquire some goods and service. What is government borrowing? It's because sometimes so the tax revenue, which is considered as the income for the government. Okay, so the tax revenue or the income of the government is not sufficient to cover, the spending. So the government need to borrow, right? So usually it's borrowed through Treasury Department, right? Now we have import and export. So this is something we already discussed in the previous lecture, right? So import essentially is goods flow from outside, and export is good flow to outside, or to the rest of the world, okay, or to other countries who have trading relationship with us. Now here's the key. So I give an example to you to understand what is inventory, right? So the last example I give to you is iPhone to prepare the incoming sales season. Usually they are going to provide a certain amount of iPhones. right? So that's kind of like inventory. But then the sale may not go as they plan. And then their inventory is going to change. But in definition, inventory is the stocks of goods and raw materials held to facilitate business operation. So for example, we go to Target. So usually they just prepare lots of diaries or like eggs or fruits or other goods, right? So just in case you need, and then they're going to get it for you, right? Because the customer may not have patience to wait the Target to go to the source to get goods you need. So they need it immediately. So they need to put them in their warehouse for you to purchase. So it's called inventory. Investment spending. Usually this is used to expand our production, like a physical capital, right? But the important thing is you need to consider some inventory change as investment spending. This is at the end of this sentence, right? Change to inventory is also considered investment spending. Again, what's the example of change to inventory? Is the case of Apple. So they produce lots of clouds. I give you an example. They produce 10 million, but then they only sell 9 million. Right? And then so you add 1 million into the inventory. So this 1 million is just change to inventory. Right? So to be precise, the story maybe goes as follows. So at the very beginning of the season, Apple decided to put 10 million unit of iPhone as inventory, just in case people need, right? So this is called inventory. Okay, and then towards the end of the season, so they have like 1 million left. Okay, so this is called inventory change, right? Okay, now we are going to have this definition for GDP. Okay, GDP stands for gross domestic product. Okay. So I would like to break down this definition in several parts. Okay. So GDP, right? So first is market value. Number one. Number two, all final goods. So now the key is final goods. Okay. We are going to have one slide to explain what is final goods. And then number three, within the country. And then number four, in the year. Right, so those are keywords. So market value, so essentially just use price times quantity so that you can compare in apple versus pear. Final goods, it's just to avoid double accounting. So it's coming up, example is coming up. All right, so this is differentiated from intermediate goods. But essentially, final means this is used for final consumption. It's not used to produce something else. Within the country is first straightforward, which means this is a geographic concept. But certainly you can replay this country into like say, a city or even village. You can talk about a village GDP. And in the year, but the certainty you can just switch this to quarter, monthly. But usually, so people look at quarterly or month or yearly, right? So this is the definition of GDP. Now, as we expand in this diagram, so that's why I spend a lot of time with that diagram. Okay, so now we can see, so there are three ways. So they equal to each other. Make sure I understand why they equal to each other. Number one, this is the most straightforward, which is you just sum together all the value of goods and service produced. But again, I want to highlight, you must look at final goods. Okay, but it's coming out soon. Okay, final goods. Number two, you can look at spending. You can look at spending. Right? But keep in mind, so this is spending on domestically produced. So that's why we look at a net export. What is net export? So you export something out of the country. So this domestic produced but consumed by others. But then we subtract what we imported, right? Because that's not what we produced. Okay. And the third, we look at income. So the total income. Okay, this is all sorts of income. This includes labor income, which is salary, capital income, okay, which is return to capital. And also we include dividend income, which is ownership of a business, right? So all sorts of income. And they add up equal to each other, or these three are equivalent. So that's coming from the discussion with this circular flow diagram, right? Any question? Right. So this kind of just reinforce what we discussed, right? Spending equal income. Why each dollar I spend is go to somebody else as income, vice versa, right? So my income is going to use to purchase something. Even I save, and then the money saved goes to somebody else is going to spend, right? Okay. So now let's look a little bit details to make sure I understand. There are some stuff we should include, but there are some we are not, right? So this goes a little bit of details. So GDP is going to measure in production, meaning the sale of used goods, they will not be included. And the sale of financial assets, they are not included. Okay, because the used goods, yes, it was produced, but it's not produced in the year or in the quarter we are considering. Financial assets, it just tells you the ownership of certain things, right? But again, those things are not produced in the current period. So that's why used goods and the financial assets, they are not included. But however, here I want to emphasize the service provided to facilitate the sale or to facilitate the transaction. Like say examples, we hire someone from Berkshire Hathaway to buy a house. The house was built in 1950. So for example, the transaction, so the final price for the house, say for example, is $500,000. Right? But you paid, say for example, I don't know how much you need to pay, like 20,000, maybe. If that's a reasonable number, let me write down. Okay. This is an important example. So in 2023, you bought a house, the house was built in 1950. All right. So the sale price of the house is 50,000. Okay. And you paid 20,000 for transaction. All right. So what I'm trying to say here is what I want to highlight is this is not in GDP because the house was built in 1950. However, this 20,000, so this is going to include in GDP. All right, because this 20,000 is paid for what? It's paid for the service Berkshire Hathaway provided. Okay, with the service so that you can do this transaction, so you can get this house you need. Is it clear? And similarly, so if you invest in stocks, if you buy, if you got money, anyway, so you've got like a $1 million of Tesla, say for example, right? And you make some profit, okay? But then you pay, let's just make up some number, 5,000 for the transaction fee you paid to TD Ameritrade. And similarly, so this 1 million, this is like value of the stock itself is not in GDP, But this 5,000 you pay to TD Ameritrade. So that including the GDP, because TD Ameritrade received 5,000. As a return, they provide service. So this service facilitate the transaction. Okay, make sure you understand. Right. Any question? Okay. Within a country is very straightforward. Right. Example. Car produced in Mexico by American firm is not included as US GDP. But a car produced in the US by Japanese firm, they are indeed included in the US GDP. We just look at geographic, whether it's inside or not. Okay. But this naturally links to earlier example, early concept I mentioned, which is GNP, gross national product. Okay. I don't want to confuse you, so let's just leave that for you to read. So you can easily just search online. But if you want to know what's their difference, let me know. I can explain to you. Right? But their difference is very small. So essentially, one is focused on geographic, the other focus on nationality. And there's a reason why they differentiate. Okay, I'm going to skip these for now. But if you're interested, just ask me. I'll explain to you. All right, so now let's look at a practice question. So this question asks you, there are two items, whether they are included in the US GDP or not. Number one, price paid by German tourists when staying at New York hotel. And second, the price paid by American who stayed at Berlin hotel. First one, is that part of US GDP? Yes, because the transaction or the service was provided inside the United States, right? On the other hand, so the second one is not, right? Okay. So answer is C. And finally, so GDP is in a year. It's like annual income, but it's annual income for a nation, for a broader economy, right? Again, like I said, so they can look at other time period, like a quarter, even a month, right? If you click this link here, you're going to see the most recent data. So they just keep updating these on a monthly basis. This is called the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Okay. All right, to summarize, what is included, what is not, right? And here, so we have a bullet point for included. I only want to highlight the following things, which is change to inventory. Okay, which is change to inventory. So later when we talk about like a mechanism, remember, so there are three modules, right? So first is measurement. Second is we are going to study mechanism, like how the macroeconomy works. And the third is talk about policy. And then when we look at measurement, we are going to see this inventory again. Okay. What is not included, that's more important. Number one, intermediate goods. Again, so it's coming out, right? So input is similar to intermediate goods, which is used to produce something else. Okay. Used goods, clear is not included because it was produced from previous period. Financial assets, I will explain to you what that means. And the last one, good and service produced outside of this country. That's obvious because this is a geographically not inside, right? So this is what included and not included. Okay. Let's just skip this and then so I will come back to the previous slide, the slides we just missed. All right. So here I want to emphasize. So what is final goods and what is intermediate goods? Okay. So essentially, so when we say final goods, essentially we cares about the value added. Okay. So what is value added? Value added is the value of the sale minus the value of purchase of intermediate goods. So that actually differentiates intermediate goods with final goods. This is an example. Okay. So in this picture on the far right, that's final good because consumed by the final consumer. But in order to make this final good, you need to use some intermediate goods like the far left, right? You need raw material, right? So clearly, this is intermediate goods. That's called INT. This is final goods. Okay. If we don't differentiate between these two, and if we just count both as a product, and then what are we going to happen? What is going to happen? There's double counting. Let's just put some numbers there, okay? Say for example, to simplify, okay, it's just simplify. If that's the only things we produce, okay, we either have a farm to raise this lamb or sheep, and then so we have factory to make these clothing. So say, you know, that's the only business we have in our economy. And furthermore, to simplify, the market value for those clothing in last year is 1 million. And for those things, including everything, okay, so to simplify, is 200,000. All right. If we just naively just sum together the value of goods and service, and then so you're going to say, oh, so the GDP is 1.2 million. Okay. But then so clearly there's what? There's a double counting, because among this 1 million, you have used this 200,000. All right, is it clear? Okay, so and then the better way to do that is you look at value added for each business, and then so for this business, for the farmer, okay, what's their value added? So their value added is this 200,000, and for the clothing company, what their value added is 1 million minus 200,000, because they use this as the input. You need to subtract that from their value added. This is clear. Okay, so we have more examples to come, all right? So we just look at value added, or in other words, we look at the final goods. Meaning, it's okay, you either look at value added, which is 2,000 plus here, this is 800,000, or you look at final goods, meaning so the only final goods is here. So it's equivalent to avoid double counting. Is this clear? Okay. Now spending. Okay, spending. So we are going to look at final goods and service. We are going to avoid intermediate goods, because intermediate goods is going to use as input for production or something else. Right? So this spending and in terms of final goods versus in the previous one, we look at value added, is the same thing. We are trying to avoid the double counting. Right? And so the way we avoid double counting, in the previous one, we focus on the production side. And in this slide, we'll focus on spending side. Right? And in terms of spending, actually, we have another equation. You're going to see this equation many times, even for more advanced class. So what is this? What this equation says? So this equation says there are 4 categories in terms of spending. Okay. I mean, for the category, that's just for the total spending, because GDP, one way to look at is total spending, right? So this includes C, I, G, and usually we just put the last 2 together. And usually we use NX, which is net export. So X stands for export. IM stands for import. Okay, actually it's coming from here. Oh, sorry. Okay, C is consumer spending. I is investment spending. G is government purchase goods and service. And X is export. and IM is import. And in the actual data, first, this value added. Okay, so this value added by different players in the economy. You can see so largely coming from business. Or alternatively, we can look at spending. Now, in terms of spending, you can see, so the things I want to highlight, spending, consumer spending is the largest item. It's close to 70%. Right? And in terms of value added, you can see business that just create the most. They create the most. That's why later we talk about policy. Okay? Or in the news, in the daily discussion. So usually, so in terms of macroeconomy, they usually focus on consumer spending and the business job creation. So that's kind of reflect by this number, because business, they contribute more than 3/4. And the consumer, similar, is more than 2/3. Right, so one is in terms of producing, the other is in terms of demanding. Right, so that's why, so we focus on business on the one hand and the consumer on the other hand. Right. By the way, you may be wondering what kind of value added created by the government. What the government is producing. So the big things government producing is national defense, right? So they're also providing other things like infrastructure. So this is value added by the government. Okay. Okay. So before this example, let's go back to the slides we skipped. So GDP in reality is going to underestimate. Certainly, it can also overestimate. So here it just says for several reasons, GDP will underestimate the actual economic activity. One example is because there are many economic activity that's happened inside the family, and it was largely untracked. Right? Let me give you an example. Okay, there are plenty of them you can think about. Or the winter break. So our dishwasher has some issue with the drain. And then, so I have a friend, so he's a plumber. No, not a plumber, I don't know. So what he does, he kind of like fix everything. He came to our house and he checked it out and he said, okay, so you need to change the pump. And then so he said, okay, so you order a pump and can come to fix for you. And then order my pump. And then he got busy, he never show up. And then so I could not wait. I just go to YouTube and find so that's an easy fix. Right? So as a matter of fact, if he actually told me so how much I need to pay for him to replace this pump, like it's very tiny things. And he said, I'm going to charge you $150. But at the end of the day, so basically I just fixed that for myself. So that just give you an example. So this $150 actually is a service. Right? So I can purchase from the market, which is from my friend. Does that make sense? But if for some reason they did not show up, I could not wait. And then I just trying to fix them myself. And this is just it just happened. But this wasn't picked up, but sorry, it failed to pick up by BEA, which is Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is the government agency to keep track of economic activity. Does that make sense? So there are plenty of examples, right? So maybe you just help with the parents, or you help with a friend to certain things. Does that make sense? Okay. So to summarize, so GDP may underestimate, but certainly there are other reasons it can overestimate. Right. Okay, we have seen these. Oh, sorry. So now we look at this example to understand how we are going to calculate GDP. Remember, I use 3 different approaches. Okay. I give you 30 seconds to read this table. And then so we can work together to find out how we calculate the GDP. Okay, so maybe we can work this together. So first, trying to extract the information based on this table. So what this economy is producing? So they produce three different goods, right? So they produce, number one, they produce oil, and then steel, and a car. So this is what the economy produce, right? And then, so furthermore, what does the consumer purchase in the economy? So the car is going to finally consume, right? And as a matter of fact, so you can see so here, so all those things, this goes to here completely. And this goes to here completely. Only this goes to, let's go to here. Only this goes to households. Is that clear? And hence, I guess if you ask me, so I'm going to do the first approach I'm going to do is just look at expenditure. Okay, but then so can anyone tell me what is going to be the total GDP for this economy if you look at expenditure, and why? If we look at spending, what is the total GDP? What do you think? Try to set. So there are three goods, right? So should we just pick one of them or to sum them together in terms of spending? You said sum together. What do you think?
It's probably the 21,500.
You say it's 21,500 plus 9,000 plus 4,200 or no?
No, just the 21.
Just the 21. Just 21. She was thinking just add those three numbers together, right? So you are right. So she thinks differently. So all right. So there are two. They have two different opinions, right? So one says we just look at this number. That's just the total spending. That's just total GDP. And the other student says so we just add these three numbers together. Which one you guys think is correct?
I think it's just the car because that's the only one that's fine with you. Like your household.
Right.
Steel or you're buying cars.
Right. Okay. So 21,500. That is the number you're going to use. And like I was trying to give you a hint. So here, yes, this 4,200. Yes, this is what you produce, but this has been completely goes to here. Meaning it has been show up in this 9,000. These are intermediate goods. And then, so this 9,000 is going to completely has been purchased by the car company used to produce car. So then, so this 21,500 is going to absorb all those things in terms of spending or production, whatever. Right? So hence, if we look at spending, and then that's very straightforward. So this is the number. This is 21,500. That's the GDP. This is in terms of spending. Okay, this is one approach. Now another approach, let's just look at income. And then we identify what is considered as income. So let's look at this column. Interest, rent, profit and a wage. Okay, so those are the income. Those are the income. All right. And then basically we just sum everything here together. So this sum those number together. Okay, let's just pick like a random row, make sure. So this is the right way. So if you look at interest, 1,000 plus 600 plus 1,000 give you 2,600. And then so the next step, you just add those numbers together because each of this number is a summation of the particular row. You're going to get the same number, 21,500. Are we good? Okay, so let me erase this, go to the last one. So the last one, we just look at firm's production. But now remember, we need to look at value added. Let's go one by one. This firm, 4,200, that's the sale. Did they use any intermediate goods? No. And then this is the value added. Second firm, 9,000, this is a sale. That's the value of their goods. But they use these as the intermediate goods. You need subtract, and hence you're going to get this one. To be sure, okay, to be precise, this is equal to 9,000 minus 4,200. And similarly here, so you have 12,500. Okay, and then so you just add these together, you're going to get the same number. Question? And then one more thing before I move to the next slides, let's just look at the first business as an example. So here, profit equal to, how we get profit? Profit equal to sale minus those numbers. All right. But then profits goes to households. That just kind of reflects to what I've said earlier. So the sale equal to total income, right? Because in order to produce, in order to generate this revenue, you need to use differences, labor, capital, land or building. And yes, you leave some profit, but profit is just as a dividends to ownership. You need to have someone own the business. All right. So hence, this is going to exhaust. I mean, this four numbers is going to exhaust this number. Nothing left. Clear? Okay. Now we go to the next one. Okay. So this one, we have the same flow chart diagram as we saw earlier. But then so just here, just simply just put the numbers on each lines. And then similarly ask you to calculate the total GDP. Before I show you how we do that, I want to warn you in the exam or in the homework, sometimes there's several questions just basically just flee. Meaning, so usually, so in the class, we have market for goods and services on the left-hand side, and the factor market on the right-hand side. And in some questions, it just simply just put the factor market on the left-hand side and a market for goods and services on the right-hand side, and then some students get confused. Just be careful about that, okay? Read the question carefully. Now let's look at it here. Let's see what we have. Let's first look at expenditure approach. For expenditure approach, to use an expenditure approach, so we need to use this equation. Y equal to C This is what we just discussed, right? Now we need to identify each number. Can anyone tell me what is C? What is C? What is C? What is C? Yeah, value, tell me the number, value, 700, very good. So what is I?
120.
For 120, right, I, very good, thank you. And then what is G? 70, where comes 70? 200. 200, good. Now X 30, right? And import is 50. And then so you just plug in those 5 numbers in this equation, you're going to get the total. We are leave that for you. Now let's look at a slightly different approach. Look at income. Look at income. So can anyone tell me what is the total income? What do you think? What's the income? Based on this diagram. Based on this diagram, let's just focus on this side. What's the income? 1,000, exactly. But now let me ask you a hard question. So what about these? Should we just take these as the income? What do you think? Yeah, it's no. What do you think? So 105, 150. Should we take these as the income or not?
No, because it goes to the government and makes it. So it ends up being the GDP, but
Right. So both of you are correct. So but here I was trying to emphasize. I mean, in the future questions, this is a direct income to household 1,000. This goes to household. But then is with this 1,000, the household is going to pay 150 as tax, right? And so sometimes in this question, this one is pretty clear, but in the future, you have going to see questions less clear. Sometimes people is going to use this 1,000 plus this 150. If you do that, that's going to be double counting. So that's what I'm trying to say. Is it clear or I'm confusing you? Clear? Okay. Right. So here, very simple. The income is 1,000. And 150 is not income. But however, if you want treat 150 as income, but then you need to subtract 150 from here. Is it clear? Okay. Now the third one, I mean, we don't have equation for the third one, so then probably skip that. One more thing I want to. There's one thing I want to draw your attention. If you look at these two numbers, can anyone tell me what is the net flow of money? What's the net flow of money? Just look at these two. How do I understand these? Is the money flow into the country or money flow out of the country? But this foreign lending, actually money is coming to. So let's say, for example, so if the rest of the world, let's say there's only one country, which is Germany. So here this just means what? German lend us 130. And we lend German 110. In the near term, German lend us 20. And then where does 20 go? Huh? It works through financial market, but what's the purpose of this $20 of lending?
it balances out the difference between your imports of 50, your exports of 30.
Excellent.
You don't have to trade.
Excellent. So So in advanced class, you're going to see, so these are two different market. This is like a capital market, this is like good market, like a sort of trade market. And here, so you have the money flow in, flow out. And in the near term, the money is going to balance the goods flow in and flow out. So here, so you import more than you export, right? But how you going to finance this extra import? That just must work through this capital market. Is it clear? Okay. One more practice question. Look at this table. Look at this table. What is the total GDP? So the reason why I put this in the slide is because usually students get confused how to dealing with sales tax. And clearly, so here, so you can only use income approach. Right? And then, so the sales tax, what are we going to do with sales tax in this case? What do you think? Or maybe just look at one column. If there's only one business in this example, if you look at the first column, can anyone tell me, so what is the total income? First, that's part of the income. And wages and rent. Okay, but then so what about the sales tax? Do you think the tax should be included as a GDP or not? So wait, that means you need to add back, no?
Well, like. It's not included.
In the profit. Okay. What else? We have other opinions. So the key is, okay, so how we are going to deal with this sales tax. So that's the main purpose of this exercise. Should sales tax include as income or not? So the answer is not. Right, so it's going to lead to double counting as you mentioned. Right. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And that's one very simple. Country A sells 100 to B and B sells 50 to A. If there are only two countries, and there's a clear A has a surplus. Sorry, A has trade surplus of 50. Right, that immediately means B has a deficit of 50. So answer is going to be A. Right? Question? All right. So next one, income spent on imported goods. Is A correct? Income, sorry, goods imported. Imported means you pay to somebody else. What do you think? Is they correct? Link just money flow out.
Over there.
No, just, no, just, it's not a weekly, yeah. So just money out, money flow out. Actually, your state is correct, because you use your money to pay for the good. And then so the money will go outside of the country. So in that sense, it's legal. And the B is also correct, right? So that's how we calculate the total GDP. The C is the same as B, okay? So A, B, and C, they are all correct. Okay, so this for this brackets. All right, so we can skip this, leave this for you to read. So they kind of give you history of who created this MIPA account. All right, so leave that for you to read. Now we move to the second half of this lecture. All right. So the main thing here, we are going to differentiate between real versus nominal GDP. What is the difference? So the difference between real and nominal GDP. So first of all, let me just write down an equation so help you to understand. So first of all, GDP is P times Q. And usually we take a summation. Okay, so this Greek letter usually means summation, right? So here, so this is summation. All right, so maybe I use like a subscript I, and here just sum over I. Is this clear to everyone? So in terms of math? So this says, okay, so if you have like 5 goods, I just for each goods, use their price times quantity. And then why we use price times quantity? So this is how you compare apple versus pear. This is what we call the market value. All right, clear? Okay. For the moment, we haven't talked about what price you use. Now here, so when we talk about a real versus nominal GDP, then so we start to serious about which price we are going to use. If it is a nominal GDP, when you calculate GDP, you use price here, you use the price in current year. And when you look at a real GDP, and then you use price of a base year or like a baseline. Why is that? So now the question is why? And certainly I'm going to give you examples to show you how we actually calculate. The reason why, so probably it's easier to use example. Let's say example, just think about very, exaggerate. So for example, Omaha only produce one thing, which is steak. Okay, let's just simplify. Say 2020 versus 2023. Okay, so we produce the exactly same amount of steak, which is like, say, for example, we produce, okay, I can just simplify, right? We only produce 10 steaks, the same things in 2023. But now the price change for some reason. Like last year, say, for example, the price is 50 per steak. Now the price goes to 70 per steak. All right. So now if we just simply calculate the GDP by using price times quantity, and then so we find out, oh, so the economy is doing very well, 500 to 700. Right? But then, so here, so you can see, okay, so the economy is growing by 40%, right? Are you guys with me? Those are very simple, right? Because you should grow from 500 to 700. So your income increase by 200. And the 200 divided by 500, that's 40%, right? Are you with me? Okay. But this is only illusion, no? Does the economy really grow? Nothing happened. Oh, sorry, nothing changed, right? You produce 10 steaks and then you produce 10 steaks this year. Nothing changed. Only changes was price. But does the price change brings you anything? Are you going to eat more steaks? No. Right? So from this example, just tells us why we need to differentiate between nominal GDP and real GDP. In a crude way, so nominal GDP is like what we just compute. So this grows this 40% growth, in general, so this 40% growth has growth in price and growth in quantity, right? And then the real GDP, we are trying to kill the price growth from the GDP growth. So that's the idea. So that we have a clean idea, okay, so how your actual output change or how your real income change. That's what we call real GDP. All right? So now let's look at examples to kind of further consolidate how we are going to calculate real GDP versus nominal GDP. Now, we have a simple economy. In this simple economy, we only produce two things: apple versus orange. Okay, there's only two things we produce. There are 2 years. Right? Not only quantity change, price also change. Right? So let me erase. So I just highlight those things. Okay. Now, in order to compute GDP, which is this row, so let's just be precise, this is nominal GDP. This is nominal GDP. In order to compute nominal GDP, what are we going to do? See, we use price times quantity, and add them together. So that's going to give you this number. Okay, I'll leave that for you. Okay, so just here, I just explain to you how we get the number. Similarly, for year 2, use price times quantity. Price times quantity. Sum them together, and then you get this number. Clear? Okay. Now, like I said in the previous slides, so if you compare this number to this number, so the GDP grow a lot. But if you just stare at those numbers, you find out, so the GDP growth not only coming from the quantity growth, it also largely coming from the price growth, right? So this is not good. And then, so what are we going to do? So correct this inflation, right? So this clear, this like inflate, right? You understand? Okay. So now what are we going to do? So we are going to pick the price and stick with the price. We always use that price. And here we use year 1. But in reality, if you read newspaper, so they have a different name. Like here, this says use year $1 or use year 1 price. It's the same thing, meaning just keep the price. Meaning, so we just fix the price, fixed price. Now, when you calculate the real GDP for year 1, it's by construction, it's been the same, right? Because you use the same price. Does it make sense? Okay, so you're going to get the same number of 1,000. Now, when you calculate year 2, things become different. You use this quantity times this price. This quantity times this price. All right? So now you're going to sum these two together. You get a number here. So now, if you compare 1,000 to 1,150, so in this number, so the only change is coming from where? Coming from quantity, not from price, because price doesn't change. Is it clear? Say it again.
Why would you use nominal GDP at all if you want to see only real GDP? So what's the point of?
Oh, that's a very very good question. So why you need a nominal GDP, as you're going to see later, there are many reasons. There are at least 2 reasons I think it's worth to mention. Number 1, so you look at a nominal GDP, that's give you an indicator how price change. This is number 1. And then number 2, certainty, so you use nominal GDP. So because sometimes the price doesn't, sorry, so you don't have you cannot calculate the real GDP as quick as nominal GDP, because like real GDP, you need to fix 1 year. You need to fix 1 year. I would say, okay, probably okay. So to be precise, okay, so nominal GDP, it just gives you an indication of the health of the economy on different aspects. Real GDP just tells you like how your income outputs grow, but then nominal GDP tells you other things. To be precise, like say, for example, one thing to tell you how price change over time. All right. Also, like a nominal GDP is quicker to calculate, right? And furthermore, let me see. Wait a second. Furthermore, to also this goes back to your questions. Furthermore, now let me just erase here. Okay, again, I leave that for you as homework, but it seems very straightforward. So here we use year 1 as base year. Now, clearly we can use year 2 as base year, right? Are you with me? Okay. But before I just ask you a further question, can anyone tell me if we use year 2 as base year, what is the real GDP of year 2? You don't need to calculate, so number is already there. 1,500, right? Okay, very good. So 1,500. So now my point is, if you use year 2 as a base year, and then you there first, this real GDP is going to 1,500. So this is another number. I don't know. But then most likely, so the growth is going to be different. The growth rate is going to be different. Okay. Then the question is, so significantly we have 2 growth rates. So here, let's call X. And clearly, you know, here the growth rate is 15%, right? No. Yeah, it is 15%. Are you guys with me? Because you grow from 1,000 to 1,150. So the growth rate is 15%. And then here you have another growth rate, and for sure it's not equal to 1,500, 15%. Huh? 15.4. That's very close. I was expecting a bigger difference. Anyway, thank you. So now you have 2 different numbers. How we are going to report the growth? Is the question clear? So here you use year 1 as the base year, you get a real GDP. Here you use year 2 as the base year, you get another real GDP. And then you have get 2 different growth rates. So now my question is, if these 2 numbers are not the same, most likely they're not the same. Then, so how are you going to report the real GDP growth? Okay, I leave that for you, and we are going to pick up that question next class. Now let's keep moving, right? So we have more things. Let's look at this one. Nominal GDP in 2011. So again, so give the time constraint. So just only make sure so you know how to calculate. All right, and then so leave the details for you. Nominal GDP in 2011, or in general, nominal GDP for each year. What are we going to do? We use these times this times this, something together. Right? Same here. This, and together. Right? So leave the details for this question for you. So now go to the next one. Same table. Now this question asks you real GDP. When 2010 is used as base year, what are we going to do? So use 5 times here, 80 times here, and similarly 5 times here, 100 times here. Right? So this is how you calculate a real GDP. Okay. Now, again, the same one, it just use 2011 as base year. So again, so use quantity times price, quantity times price, right? Quantity times price, quantity time price. Any question? No? Okay, very good. All right, leave that for you. Okay, so now we look at the actual data. If you glance through this table, can anyone tell me which year is the best year? Just look at the number. Which year is the best year? Right, so how you reach that conclusion?
Because the real GDP in 2009 is the same.
The same, so that's by contract, it's the same, right? And then furthermore, so you can see if this is a base year, before base year, usually real GDP is higher than nominal GDP. After the base year, usually nominal GDP is higher than real GDP. And what does this mean? We see the pattern, you see the pattern. What does this mean? Let's just start with this one, it's easier. Okay, 2013, nominal GDP is higher than real GDP. So if you compare the price level, overall price level of 2013 with 2009, higher, right? So that's why, so nominal GDP is higher than real GDP. And you reverse, so because usually 2009 as the base year, and then 2005, nominal GDP is lower than real GDP means, so the price level in 2005 is lower compared with 2009. But overall, if you look at the long history, so usually the price level is growing, right? But then, so look at the nominal GDP is going to give you an indicator of the price growing. But certainties we need to do some conversion. So that's coming up soon, right? So this summarizes right here. Okay, so let me just stop in this slides. Okay, number one, usually nominal GDP is different from real GDP, except in base year. And then number two, so this is a circle back to earlier question asked you. So you use 1 year, use base year, you calculate the real and nominal, and use another one, calculate the real and nominal. The growth is different. If the growth is different, how you're going to report, and then we are going to rely on change dollar. So essentially, let's go back to previous one. What this means is, sorry, like in this example, right? So you have X and Y, they're different, right? And then, so what we can do is just take the average. What average you're going to use? You can use by the what we call the geometric average, or you use another one. No, I forgot. Can anyone tell me what's the name for that? So there are two different average. One is like X plus Y divided by 2. The other is square root of X times Y. How you call these two average? This is called geometric average. Is that right? Does anyone know? Huh? They have a specific name for that. Okay, but anyway, so you understand what I'm trying to say, right? So you can either use this average or this average, but usually for this class we use this average. To summarize, we have looked at nominal GDP and real GDP, and then so in next class, we're going to finish this slides first and go to the next chapter, right? But in the next class, so essentially we're going to talk about price level, right? Thank you so much for your attention, and see you today is Thursday, no? See you on Tuesday. See you Tuesday, right? Thank you so much for your attention.